Hi, this is BK Black Krishna for manfulwars.com, where I'm promoting polite patriotism. Tell people be nice to, relax, and respect each other, look, walk, talk, and feel great, communicate well offline about what to learn online, and be proud nationalists against globalism wherever they live. So feel free to check out and support the manfulwars.com efforts as you like. There's PayPal donation and direct deposit information below as well. But this video is called England Spent Decades Ignoring Radical Muslim Child Rapists. Can the world learn to stop this? And basically, political correctness causing social constipation, trouble talking, and gender neutralization, trouble acting like ladies and gentlemen, like men and women, like masculine and feminine human beings who can respect each other and feel like talking, is the globalist radical left plan to kind of turn us all into weak, controllable commie zombies. And so conservatives, nationalists, and patriots out there have to try and fight against that. And this video is not just me speculating, not just me being racist, not just whatever. This is the results of a trial that happened recently in England that proves exactly what I'm saying when it comes to the title of this video. So I'll go into a bit of that, and as reported on by Breitbart News, an excellent news source, excellent conservative news source with an excellent nose for news. The late great founder of Breitbart, Andrew Breitbart, said politics is downstream from pop culture, so they do a great job of covering both, because pop culture can kind of change the way people think, often through fiction. You're more guarded than you are, or you're less guarded than you are when you watch the news, so you can absorb it easier, and then as it changes the culture, laws and policies often reflect that. So Breitbart News is a great source, and to get into this article, it says here, 7 found guilty over Rotherham grooming and rape of young girls. There's Breitbart News. There's the headline. There's some of the guys. And it's by Ms. Victoria Friedman from October 29th, 2018. So it says here, 7 men of Pakistani heritage from South Yorkshire were found guilty of sexual offenses against underage girls in the latest abuse trial following the inquiry into the Rotherham grooming gang scandal. So basically, when it comes to children being raped, not just raped, because one child being raped once, having their entire life altered, possibly ruined, is bad enough. These men are quote-unquote Pakistani Muslim men who are part of grooming gangs. Grooming sounds like you're grooming a dog, as the great Tommy Robinson says. They make it seem like it's not child pimping and prostitution and rape, to the point where you not only rape a child, you have a child as a sex slave, and you use that child as your prostitute for hundreds of other men, right? So if political correctness can stop people in a country from protecting their own children from being raped and used as prostitutes for other men where they live, then ultimately that is the destruction of cultures. If you can't say anything to say, look, I'm saying something because I think children might be being prostituted and raped right now. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize if somebody's sensitive, if they get their manties or panties in a bunch. But if I'm right, we're saving kids from getting raped. So is it not worth it to say something, even if some people get their manties or panties in a bunch, especially when there's this much proof, right? And so this is the ultimate test for all of Western civilization. Will political correctness stop people from talking about the possibility of their children or children from their country getting repeatedly prostituted and raped by men in their country? Because if political correctness can stop you from doing that, then you might as well go to hell, because that's where you'll be living soon anyway. So back to this article. It says here, Salah Ahmed El-Hakam, 39, Asif Ali, 33, Tanwir Ali, 37, Muhammad Imran Ali Akhtar, 37, Nabil Khurshid, 35, and Iqlaq Yusuf, 34, and a 7th man who cannot be named for legal reasons were convicted on Monday of grooming and sexually abusing 5 underage girls between 1998 and 2005, reports the BBC. So this is a bunch of guys in their 30s, just aroundish the prime of their lives. Should be strong men who are protectors, not weak men who take advantage of kids, right? And when it comes to child trafficking and sex trafficking, as more insecure adults are turning into pedophiles and turned into pedophiles, and insecure sexualized kids are turned into pedo food for pedophiles, this sort of thing becomes more normal. That's why it's so important to promote being strong men, strong, confident, capable, straight up, don't lie, look each other in the eye, polite and brief, stay busy or friendly to be respected. And then if they create the environment where they're confident and they can help each other be confident, then you can have confident women and children and confident feminine and child vulnerability, where they can be gracefully distracting or attractive or good company, and they can look to you as a source of strength as opposed to looking at you as a weak man who can't reinforce your source of strength. Men get credit for their discipline, could be obnoxious, could be too loud, could be too physical. Discipline that after acting like a man, being cool. And then women and kids generally get credit for sharing with somebody worth sharing with. As all of this is attacked, you have a bunch of guys in their mid-30s losing their minds and prostituting and raping children. And pedophilia is on the increase around the world. And the globalists, super rich people at the top, they're supposedly into it. They want to weaken countries and people in those countries to control them and bring in more global governance structures, hence the globalist title, more UN, International Criminal Court, World Trade Organization, more faraway bureaucracy controlling your country like the European Union does with their 28 member states, then people in their own countries, proud, polite, patriotic people who communicate well and who put the right people in positions of power to defend where they live, so they have a great place to live, great place to visit, and they can be a great, proud, polite, patriotic country full of people who can comfortably interact with and trade with other countries. This is attacking all of that. Plus, these days, with all these conditions, and nationalists and patriots and often conservatives trying to fight against this, human trafficking and child trafficking are much more popular today. You can see somebody like Craig Sawyer at VETS4, that's the number 4, childrescue.org, VETS, vets 4, childrescue.org. And he's talked about, based on his research and how his team of ex-law enforcement, ex-diplomatic corps, ex-military, and others, some people in the media industry, working together to try and expose this to everybody. He's made the point from his research that human trafficking and child sex trafficking is now, if you're a criminal, the most profitable industry in the world. It's way more profitable than drugs. Because if you sell drugs, you got to get the drugs in, bring the nice cocaine in from Colombia. It's a very complicated process to ship it from Colombia to, say, England or America or Canada or some other place in the world. So that's very complicated. And then once you finally get the drugs there, sure, you can still make money selling drugs, no doubt. But once you sell the drugs are gone, and you got to get more drugs. When it comes to kids, you can have the kid there, and you can use the kid. You can sell the kid to a dozen or a couple of dozen guys a day to rape and molest that kid. And then, from there, the kid's still there. The kid's there the next day, right? So child trafficking and human trafficking is now becoming a huge cash industry. It's becoming the most profitable criminal industry, especially with insecure adults turning into pedophiles and insecure kids turning into pedo food. So we've got to protect Western values and manners and standards, and people around the world have to do the same, or they can see the same things happening. So you got a bunch of guys in their mid-30s here convicted of grooming and sexually abusing just 5 underage girls between 1998 and 2005. And you'll see this number 5 is terrible. Even one child is terrible. But you'll see that this is more than likely a cover-up of just how horrible things were, during this time period, as large parts of England ignore this for decades. But that's a little snapshot of what's going on. So back to this article. An eighth man, Ajmal Rafiq, 39, was found not guilty of indecent assault and false imprisonment. And these cases are very tricky. Sometimes the evidence is gone, or children aren't the most reliable witnesses because they're kids, and adults aren't the most reliable witnesses either. But when it comes to kids, a lot of times they're not seen as credible. And so it can be really hard. So, theoretically, these guys are convicted on Monday of grooming and sexually abusing 5 underage girls between 1998 and 2005. So that's a 7-8 year period right there, and just 5 girls. But as this article continues, you'll see it's a hell of a lot more than 5 girls. And it's more than likely, if these guys were into this sort of thing, then they did this to way more than 5 girls over a 7 or 8 year period. And the article gets into why that is likely. So back to this article from, again, Ms. Victoria Friedman from October 29th, 2018 at Breitbart News, Breitbart.com. And I'll put a link to this below. Back to this article. During the trial, the victims revealed the extent of the abuse, with one survivor telling the court that she had been raped by, quote, at least 100 Asian men by the age of 16. So what happened to all the Johns? They got the pimps, right? The people prostituting the girls. But what about the Johns? What about the hundreds and hundreds or thousands of men that were having sex with these kids? What's happening to them? What's up with them? What are they up to now? Right? Are they looking for more kids to rape and molest? Because this is what they get into, right? And then in England, they've switched from they now call all Muslims Asians. They say Asian, the generic term Asian. When we know in the West, in places like Canada, America, England, Western Europe and others, that Asian is generally used to refer to people of Chinese background or Korean background, etc., etc., etc. But they use the blanket term Asian because of fears of quote-unquote Islamophobia. And when you put any group of people above the law and above reproach, the worst elements rob, rape, and murder people, including children, as this case clearly demonstrates. So while she says here she'd been raped by at least 100 Asian men, she really means mostly Pakistani Muslim men or others like that. Not Chinese, not Korean, not Indonesian, not Thai, not Vietnamese, not in the way that Asian has colloquially been used to generally refer to people with Oriental features, but really specifically Muslim men who, according to some radical extremists in their culture, think it's okay to do this to girls who are not Muslim, who are not properly covered, whose parents are heathens and infidels as well. So this is this is not revealing who's behind this problem, what type of thinking is behind this problem. This is trying to cover that up with the term Asian men. That's gained a lot of popularity in England, because if you say it was Muslim men, then you'll be seen as Islamophobic, even though it actually was Muslim men. And nothing against all Muslims, but if you can't say that, again, the worst elements will rob, rape, and murder people. You could take a bunch of Canadians, right? You could even be all different colors. White Canadians, black Canadians, brown Canadians, Hispanic, Asian Canadians, whatever. And you could send them all off to Pakistan. And you could drop 1 million Canadians in Pakistan. And you could say, don't be Canadian phobic. Don't be Canadian. Don't say anything about Canadians. Don't say they're Western people, not Canadians, just Westernish people, right? Or Western Hemisphere-ish people, right? Not Canadians, right? And a bunch of them will be fine. But the criminals among those Canadians will be, wait a second. So you're not allowed to say anything about us because of political correctness. So great. So we can rob, rape, and murder people. Why? Because if you say anything, you'll be accused of being anti-Canadian or Canadian-phobic, right? And so this could happen with anybody, anywhere. So it's a universal principle that you've got to apply, as opposed to what the radical left is doing when it corrupts modern liberals and everybody, which is using tactics. So the tactics are good for this group, not good for that group, whereas principles, which conservatives often try and preserve what works, liberals try and make changes. It can work well when there's proud, polite, patriotic people who can respect each other and discuss these things. But when you have the radical left corrupting liberals, so they say don't talk to people you disagree with, you want to see them deplatformed online and offline, they're Nazis, racist, phobic, and so on, then they can't talk to each other because what if they disagree? What if they're individuals? What if they have their own opinion? What if they make each other uncomfortable? What if they don't know much about what they're talking about and they get paranoid about it and they accuse you of making them feel bad? You know, this is the type of brainwashing that's going on. So this is why we've got to fight against this and the control over language, because all this does is it empowers the criminals in any communities. But it says here, she said she'd been raped. One of the victims said she'd been raped by at least 100 Asian men by the age of 16. And again, if political correctness stops you from saving kids from getting pimped and prostituted and repeatedly raped for years, for decades where you live, then you might as well go to hell, because you're going to be living in hell anyway, because of what's happening where you live and what you allow to happen because of political correctness. And then you'll have trouble talking, and you'll be sheepish, sideways, silly, bitchy, fake, sullen, bitchy, fake, or shrill, bitchy. And then you'll be stuck with other people doing the same thing because you don't have any national pride. Defend your people and your culture against this, regardless of your background. There are people that want to be in Western countries, that want to have Western values along with Western standards of living, that want to have polite European manners because that's how they get along. And other people go somewhere else, live somewhere else. If you don't like it here, then don't come here and don't try and change what this is. We've got a good thing going. That's why people around the world want to come here. Slow, controlled, organic growth of immigration when you have enough resources for yourself and extra wanted ads in the paper is the right thing to do, as opposed to bringing in masses of people, not being allowed to say anything about that or about the process of how it's going to be done and whether or not it's going to go well or not. That's where you run into all sorts of problems. No proper background checks for people, no proper police checks for people, no proper paperwork from their home countries. These aren't the people you want to let in en masse, because the worst elements put above the law and above reproach by political correctness will bully and rob, rape, and murder people. At the top, they'll keep bullying you, victim bullies, victim cry bullies, pushing for more and more influence over your culture and subversion over your culture. And then at the bottom, scumbags getting away with this type of garbage, right? And there are elitist pedophiles, the globalists at the top. Super rich people are supposedly satanic pedophiles. They're into that sort of thing, raping, killing kids, drinking their blood, adrenochrome, using it to keep them young, blah, blah, blah. There's been stories like this going back for hundreds of years, right? And they're supposedly into that, so they want to normalize it. And it's their main human resources tool to corrupt, bribe, and blackmail high-ranking members of the establishment, including political elites, business elites, entertainers, and others, to get them into the club, to hook them up when they get them addicted to having sex with kids, and to blackmail them in case they want to do something else, because they'll just take pictures of you with these kids and they'll say, we have this on you, do what we say. So as the globalist main human resources tool, we have to watch for this being normalized anywhere, and we've got to expose this. Because what likely happened in these cases is local establishment politicians who were into this, corrupted, bribed, and blackmailed, or part of the secret pedophile club, were getting along with this, and they were showing up and raping these kids too, and then they were lying and saying, due to political correctness, don't say anything. So we want to rape kids, but don't say those people are prostituting and raping kids because of political correctness. Not because we want to rape kids, but because we're such good people and we're virtue signaling, we're liberals, and we don't want to feel bad or make anybody else feel bad. We've got to be super sensitive, so don't even mention it. So pedophiles could use political correctness to get away with raping kids and act like they're good people who won't let anyone else say anything, because if you say anything about it, then you're a bad person. And that's completely insane. And we have plenty of evidence of this. This has happened all over Europe, especially in England. Tommy Robinson's been warning about this stuff. TommyRobinson.online. Support his great work since 2004. And even though he's been mocked, and he's been banned, and he's been censored, and he's been beaten, and he's been jailed, and he's been death threatened, and he's been almost killed, and his family's been threatened, and his beautiful wife and his beautiful 3 kids. He's doing this for them. And since 2004, over the last 14, 15 years, he's been proven right. And the same people that ignored him or mocked him or wouldn't talk to him or believed the media lies and slander, now, after 14, 15 years in England of seeing this problem get worse and worse and worse, they're now rallying to his defense by the thousands as he gets dragged into court on bogus charges for talking about this sort of thing. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people are normal British people are out there to support him because they realize he's absolutely correct. So that's why this video is called England Spent Decades Ignoring Radical Muslim Child Rapists. Can the world learn to stop it? Stop this? Because you can simply look at the examples. It's not even like you're saying, well, you know, I hate those people, so I want to say some bad things about them. It's like, no, we've already been through this. We've already seen people go through this. So we don't have to go through this if we can learn the lessons from what they went through. So back to this article. Another girl had told the jury that she had been bitten and raped in Sherwood Forest by two men after they fed her drugs. One girl had fallen pregnant and had an abortion by the age of 14, while another had given birth by the age of 15, her son fathered by an abuser. So these are little girls being forced into prostitution, being raped by their pimps and raped by the Johns and the people that are showing up, the insecure adults turning into pedophiles, preying on insecure, sexualized kids turning into pedo food, and kids from broken homes as political correctness causes social constipation, trouble talking, and gender neutralization, trouble acting like confident, masculine, and feminine men and women. And this is nothing against anybody else. If 95+% of people were straight, were great at it, then they could set the manners and standards, and then other people who are LGBT, whatever, could also earn people's respect by not bothering them, by being nice, polite people in the manners and customs of where you live, and then earning each other's respect and learning more about each other and being comfortable in their own skin and with other people instead of messed up, lying, bitchy, sketchy, victim cry bullies, which is the sort of reverse of all that that's happening to everybody. So that's something we've got to guard against. So back to this article. The prosecutor had told the jury during the 8-week trial that the gang had targeted the 5 girls because they, quote, were easy targets, unquote, from broken homes who, quote, wanted to be loved, unquote, and were, quote, lured by the excitement of friendship with older Asian youths. So between all the propaganda and the political correctness and the sensitivity and the broken homes and the normal local population being all cucked up and sheepish and sideways and bitchy and sketchy and not respecting themselves or each other, and then migrant populations who sure as hell aren't going to assimilate with cucked up people with no self-respect who won't respect each other or defend where they live. And so they try and take over, and the globalists the globalists, super rich people outside of countries, trying to weaken countries and people and control them, as opposed to nationalists who are trying to defend their countries and where they live. The globalists who are pushing this type of propaganda are brainwashing kids into going along with this. And so you'll even have girls in different parts of Europe, like in Sweden and so on, who are like, I'm not into Swedish youths anymore, I'm not into Swedish guys anymore. They're all quiet and cucked up. They're just like bitchy, ugly, messed up girls, really. I want a real man. So who do I want? I want one of these radical migrants who just got here. They're not as messed up. They didn't go through the school system attacking boys and men. They didn't go through all the propaganda, the men are stupid on TV. They didn't have weak, silly, bitchy, or sullen, bitchy, or absent fathers. They didn't have shrill, bitchy mothers who couldn't stand the fact that there's no men around and life sucks, just like the bitchy men turning into bitchy women, right? So these kids with no strong, proud, polite, patriotic adult role models, and then with other brainwashing and propaganda saying, love all the migrants, love the Muslims, you should consider this, why don't you wear a hijab, blah, blah, blah. They get off, they want to be loved, people with no self-respect can't love themselves, other people, and lured by the excitement of friendship with older Asian youths. So this propaganda campaign is going on around the world, Asian meaning Muslim youths in this case, right? They're the dangerous ones. They're the badass ones. They're the confident ones. We're going to take over. We're going to bully, rob, rape, and murder you, or we're going to have 5 to 10 kids each, and we're going to run this place soon. And so that type of strength is attractive. Confident masculine strength is attractive. Other guys can be cool with it, and girls and kids can be cool, safe around it, and charm you into taking the edge off and being nice to them, right? So because normal adults in Western nations especially, but around the world, are being destroyed as part of this politically correct campaign, the globalist radical left corrupting liberals and everybody else as part of that. This is what the kids are turning to. Where can I find a decent man? Not some shitty facsimile, but a real man. And if ours are dead or half dead or walking around like they're half dead, then why don't we, hook up with these people who just got here, who are not assimilating well with the quiet, local, cucked up culture, but at least they're badass dudes and they can still be confident and charming, so they can trick us into being prostitutes for them. So this is literally the quotes of the guys talking about this, talking about the girls, or the girls talking about this, and how this sort of thing happens. That's why at manforwars.com I'm promoting polite patriotism, because they are very much related. Otherwise, it's interesting information, but you can't respect yourself or other people. They don't respect you. You can't talk about it. And so it's just sort of, it becomes theater or interest as opposed to something you could really act on, where online information becomes a catalyst for offline action, and that is the ideal. So this is an example of what happened in England and what the whole world can learn from. And there's a tweet here from a previous Breitbart article, Asian, in quotes, because not Asian, Pakistani Muslims specifically, and it becomes a thing in your community, right? Because if you're in that community and you are some of the scumbags in that community, and it's a closed-off community, and you're not assimilating or integrating well with the local, quiet, cucked up and cowed population, then, you could be like, well, I'm driving a cab in England for £40,000 a year and having trouble making ends meet and putting my 5 to 10 kids through school. And then one of your buddies says, hey, why don't you join one of our grooming gangs? Because of political correctness, we're above reproach and we're above the law. Really? How much do you make? $500,000 a year. $500,000 a year? Yeah, I make $1,000 a day. Sell this kid for $200 a pop, 5-10 times a day. I make $500,000 a year off this kid. And it's better than drugs. The kid's still there. The kid's raped and beaten up or whatever, but the kid's still there. So next day, more people have sex with that kid, give me money for it, bang, 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 bang. And the other guy driving the cab is going, wait a minute, this is nuts. I'm making £40,000 a year driving a cab here. Screw this. I'm going to get into the child prostitution business, right? So it becomes a thing in certain communities if you allow it to become a thing in certain communities. So that's an example. So back to this article. The jury also heard that the victims were frequently in cars with their rapists and stopped by the police, but this did not deter the abusers. So you've got two classes. One, sellout pedophile police, as part of pedophile clubs, establishment, elitist, whatever, pedophile clubs and networks operating in different communities. Or two, political correctness. If I stick my neck out and these other officers crap on me, or I get crapped on, or my boss craps on me, it's just not worth it to lose my job, lose my pension, and so on. So this is how bad it gets, where police, whose jobs are to keep their eyes open and survey the neighborhood, look for patterns, look for suspicious behavior. That's pretty much all they do when they're not specifically focused on something. They drive around and look for these things. If they look in a car and they see 10, 11, 12-year-old British white girl with 35-year-old Pakistani Muslim man, and they go, hey, so what's that? What's going on? Who's that? You're stopped. You were stopped by police. Are the police allowed to ask, what is your relationship? Or should they just go, 35-year-old Pakistani Muslim man with 12-year-old British white girl? Probably perfectly fine, And it could be perfectly fine. It could be just a guy where you could ask that question. And you could say, well, what's up with you in this car with this, mixed bag of girls here, in your car? And you could say, oh, I'm driving them to soccer practice. I am one of the soccer dads as part of our soccer-loving community, and it is my turn this week to drive, our 5 kids to soccer practice. Great. Have that conversation. Be cool, polite, self-respecting adults who can mix it up like that and get her done and get on with your day. But if you can't even ask that question, then this is what happens. Even the police, whose jobs it is to look out for this sort of thing, can stop cars with rapists and the children they're raping and prostituting, and didn't even stop the abusers. They're not even worried. They aren't worried, and the cops are more worried about political correctness than they are about doing their jobs and questioning people who deserve to have some questions asked towards them, right? And you could always say, I do the same thing. I'd be like, go to a house, hey, what are all these little girls here, dressed like whores, doing at your house, right? It's like, oh, they're in a play, we're doing The Great Gatsby, and they're dressed up for okay, fine. Sorry. I was trying to potentially stop kids from being raped, but if that really is what's going on, I'm terribly sorry for disturbing you or even bringing it up, but you have to understand, I've got some legitimate concerns about this, right? So I can ask the question, and don't you get your manties or panties in a bunch and talk about how bad you feel when that's a perfectly reasonable question for any adults to ask any other adults in their neighborhood, in their country, about this sort of thing going on. So back to this article. The convictions are the latest to follow on from the National Crime Agency's Operation Stovewood, the country's largest law enforcement investigation into grooming gang-based child sexual exploitation. Excuse me. It says here, Operation Stovewood came about as a result of the 2014 J report, which found that 1,400 estimates revised up to 1,510 last year, mainly white, working-class girls had been groomed and raped by gangs of mostly Pakistani origin Muslim men between 1997 and 2013. And this has been going on a lot longer than that, back into the 80s. But this is an official government report. After the hubbub went so crazy, people are going so crazy about this, that the government actually had to have an official report. And originally it was 1,400 girls. That was a low-end estimate. Then it was revised to up to 1,510 girls, which is arguably still a low estimate, being raped, groomed and raped by gangs of mostly Pakistani origin Muslim men between 1997 and 2013. So that's 15, 16 years, 15, 16, 17 years that this is going on. And it says here, the report also exposed the culture in police and social services of political correctness and of not believing victims that allowed the abuse to go on for so long. And if the political correctness gets so bad where you live, like it did in England, this is the exact same thing that will happen. You could have a child, show up and say, hey, I'm being prostituted by a bunch of Pakistani Muslim men, and have the social service worker or the police officer or whoever go, I don't want to touch this because of political correctness. Even though my job is to stop children from getting prostituted and raped, I do not want to touch this because if I'm wrong, or if I'm overzealous, or if people want to call me out on this and use political correctness to accuse me of having racism on my mind instead of the safety of children on my mind, it could cost me my job in my position. So screw it, kid. Not going to believe you. I'm not sticking my neck out for you, even though it's my job as a police officer or social services person working in child services or child protection services or children's aid society or whatever the hell it is. Not going to touch this. It's just not safe. So can the world learn from this? We got to learn from this. That's why you got to beat political correctness. So you don't have trouble talking, social constipation, don't have gender neutralization, trouble acting like men and women who respect each other. Because if you don't respect each other, you don't feel like talking. And then this stuff gets worse and worse and worse, right? So back to this article. This is just the latest conviction of a Pakistani heritage grooming gang from Rotherham, with another recent trial ending in the sentencing of 20 abusers in Huddersfield. So stuff like this is going on all over the place. This is just one example of all these things taking place and all these trials taking place and so on. And like I said, convicting these 7 guys for raping 5 kids over a 7-year period is obviously a low estimate. It's very rare you have pedophiles that just prey on 1 kid. If they're into it, there's a hell of a lot more involved. And this will destroy your whole culture. The whole next generation will be completely destroyed. And if you were abused by pedophiles, you're more likely to be a pedophile in the future as well. So it's creating a whole new generation of pedophiles. This is why the world has to learn from this and try and stop it. So, back to this article. Home Secretary Sajid Javid, himself of Muslim Pakistani heritage, was criticized by leftists for his reaction to the conviction of the Huddersfield rape gang when he condemned them as sick Asian pedophiles. So leftists criticized him, even though he was saying, nope, this is sick, this is crazy. Yeah, I'm a Pakistani Muslim man, but I'm the Home Secretary responsible for Homeland Security, as it were. And I think this is awful, and leftists are going after him. Right? Same origin as the rapists and the community where this is the most prominent. And even he's not safe from political correctness by the leftists. Now, why do the leftists do this? Commie zombie brainwashing. Most important thing is to be a crying, a victim bully, right? And above that, and possibly even as part of that, are pedophiles who are saying, don't say anything about this. They're lying. They're lying. They're pedophiles lying. They're using political correctness to get away with their pedophilia, and they're cowing the local population into not being able to say anything about it so they can. So this is amazing, where leftists care more about political correctness than the safety of children, hence another great reason to reject globalist, radical leftist ideas corrupting cultures around the world and weakening them to make them easier to control for more global governance structures. So it's part of a bigger picture, but you can see how it's being done through some of these micro examples. So back to this article. In an interview with The Times on Saturday, Mr. Javid said that Pakistani heritage child gang rapists had, quote, disgraced his ethnic heritage, admitting that, quote, there must be some cultural connection, some reason. Yeah, and you got to figure this out and root it out. And it's going to take more than just Pakistani Muslims policing themselves. That's like asking a black guy in Compton, California, which is famous for being gang country with Crips and Bloods, to get out in the middle of the street and say, gangs suck, Crips suck, and Bloods suck. You're dealing drugs, you're ruining the neighborhood, you're causing violence, people are scared to live here. They might just get shot the heck up, right? So it's going to take more, obviously. Members of your community should help police yourselves, but it's going to take a broader community effort. Everyone in your community and in your country must be behind this, because you can't just hang them out to dry. You can't just say, you people need to take care of this yourselves. You got to say, when it comes to something like this, when it comes to kids involved where we live, we can all agree that we have to stop it. And if there's a problem in any given community with some members of that community doing this, we can all speak out against it. And he admits, yeah, there's definitely some Pakistani men and some criminals in the Pakistani culture that think this is perfectly fine, and this is a serious problem. So even the Pakistani origin Home Secretary, Mr. Javid, said there must be some cultural connection, some reason. He's admitting this. There's too many goddamn cases, and it's typically the same thing. Pakistani Muslim men doing this, where it got hot, it got popular in their culture. It could be the same thing as, say, Chinese counterfeiting. Nothing against all Chinese, hardworking, industrious people. You know, if they're in the West and they got Western values and standards, and they still can celebrate some of where they're from too, who cares, right? But if some of them are counterfeiting sneakers and they're making fake Jordans or fake Kanye West Yeezys, then you can say, yeah, this is a problem. A bunch of Chinese people and other Chinese people are recruiting them into making fake sneakers and ripping off big corporations. That's a problem with those people recruiting other people in that community. Nothing against all of them, but there is a problem in that subset of our population. It's the same thing with this. It's not about all of them, but there's definitely a problem there. It could be anybody. It could be any group within those circles, just like it could be some people in a certain town, some people in a certain culture, some people at a certain university. Any way you want to create a subset of people, if there's a group of people in that subset causing problems, that has to be the issue, as opposed to saying don't demonize any of those people and let the criminal elements bully, rob, rape, and murder people, including kids. So, this is a key here. So back to this article. In July, the Home Secretary ordered research into the ethnic and cultural component of grooming gangs and has vowed to fight, quote, uncivilized forced marriage in the UK. Excuse me. So finally, after decades of kids getting raped, we're going to look into, what's behind this. Is there a cultural connection? Are there some bad ideas that are making their way in certain communities? Right? If a handful of black people were like, man, we should just kill any white person we see, then you can't say, don't say anything, they're black. You have to stop the people that want to kill any white person they see. You got to say, look, some of the people in this community are wilding out. Bunch of white people, bunch of anybody, bunch of Hispanics, anybody, right? So it's not about using political correctness to stop this or to stop people from dealing with this. It's about beating political correctness, putting kids first, and then cleaning this out of any cultures in your community and in your country, and cleaning it out of your community and your country. And this is something the whole world can learn from based on examples like this. And there's another tweet here that Breitbart is referencing from Breitbart London. It says here, child rape gang which saw Tommy Robinson jailed over reporting restrictions sees 20 abusers jailed. Campaign of rape and other sexual abuse against kids. So here's another example that they're referencing when it comes to this. And it says here, the full details of the latest convictions are as follows. 1 count of rape, 3 counts of indecent assault, sexual assault, procuring a girl to have unlawful sex with another, aiding and abetting Tanwir Ali to commit rape. And this is one guy, Muhammad Ikram Akhtar. So again, over a 7-year period, it says here, from 1998 to 2005, they got these guys, these 7 men, for raping just 5 girls. And this is way more than this. But you got to prove it, you got to have evidence. But logically speaking, you got to figure, if these pedophiles were operating for 7 years, and this is what they were into, way more than 5 girls that these 7 men abused. Another one, 1 count of indecent assault and found guilty of 2 counts of indecent assault. Indecent assault. Again, this is more than likely a cover-up. The scale of this problem is so massive that they have to do things like this. They have to throw at least some people in jail because it's just getting way too out of hand. They could cover it up for decades, but finally, they've got to at least throw some people in jail and even give them lighter sentences than normal for pedophiles and child prostitution gangs and rape gangs, right? And so it says here, Tanwir Ali was found guilty of 2 counts of rape, 2 counts of indecent assault, and 1 count of false imprisonment. Another guy, 1 count of rape. Another guy, 2 counts of rape and 1 count of indecent assault. Another guy, 2 counts of indecent assault and 2 counts of rape. And one man who cannot be named for legal reasons was acquitted of abducting a child and rape, but found guilty of 2 counts of rape. The 7 are due to be sentenced November 16th. And that's the end of this article from Breitbart News. I'll put a link to it below as well. 7 found guilty over Rotherham grooming and rape of young girls. And based on the way the system's been acting, this is just a fraction of the story. So anyway, we can all learn from this. Again, polite patriotism is super important. If you want to support the manforwars.com efforts, I've got PayPal donation and direct deposit information below. Feel free to get in touch and so on and so forth. Otherwise, BK Black Krishna for manforwars.com. I hope this helps, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.